Big Cat, and every one of us here, Cats. Happy 2022 season. Ski-wee-wee!
On your mark. Set. Let's go all the way to the finish line. Good race. Look at those sprinters go.
The day is just set up to watch these students shine. It's an amazing time for the students to interact with all the wonderful people who support them from day to day.
A satisfying return to a sense of normality, not seen for more than 2 long years of loss. The world's still learning how to recover and navigate a new reality. Good evening, I'm Matt Ingram, and thank you for joining us for Your Road Ahead, a CHCH News special report. It's been more than 800 days since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, nobody knowing the chaos and confusion to come or when this collective nightmare was going to end. Tonight we take a look at how the virus thoroughly interrupted our lives, pushing our most critical resources to their breaking point, but also the progress being made to bounce back and what work still lies ahead. With the school year winding down, let's begin with education. We visited Fitch Street Public School in Welland to speak with students and staff about their experiences and what comes next.
It was a great experiment of sorts, born of necessity. Children trying to learn from home, away from the supports of teachers and classmates.
I kind of gave up after a while just because I was exhausted with it.
I wasn't putting that much effort into my work as I would have done in actual in school.
It's like hard to learn. It's like watching a movie, but without like seeing the thing.
Online learning became the new reality as schools were closed in March 2020, when Ontario declared a state of emergency. Between March 2020 and May 2021, Ontario schools were closed for 20 weeks, not including additional regional closures. That's longer than any other Canadian province or territory. Those closures returned the following school year, Omicron extending the winter holiday.
They were suffering a bit, right? They needed their friends, they needed their peers.
Grade 7 teacher STEFAN ILSKENS taught students online and says it wasn't the best for his kids, forcing them to learn without an educator in the room to help and negatively impacting their social development.
They just weren't getting that social communication with their friends, which I think is, in my opinion, getting to grade 7 and 8 is probably one of the most crucial things, especially moving forward into high school.
Even my social levels before weren't that good, but after COVID, it got even drastically bad.
The situation also negatively impacted their mental health.
100% with my mental health. Things have become a lot more scarier, especially when it comes to talking to other people.
Online wasn't easy for the younger kids either, who had never experienced a normal school year before the last return to class in September. They had to be taught basic skills and routines.
It was pretty sad because I loved going to school and seeing all my friends.
Online is not ideal for kids.
Catherine HODSON is the principal here at Fitch Street Public School and says for teachers, it was very difficult to engage kids in learning over a laptop, but the initial return to class with extensive protocols and restrictions on activities wasn't easy either.
So the kids still had to sit in straight lines. You didn't share resources. You couldn't pull groups together. At recess, the kids still played on their own.
Education experts say students are suffering learning loss, simply meaning a loss of knowledge and skills due to being out of the classroom, and the time isolating at home has resulted in behavioral problems and difficulties interacting with other kids. While challenges remain to make up for lost time, teachers here say their kids are rebounding now that they're back.
They have adjusted, maybe because they're so young. Even if they're a little bit further behind in grade 1, by the time they get to grade 3, they're all caught up anyway.
Their principal says the biggest challenge for students will be catching up on their social development, but she believes the impact of the class time lost won't be lifelong.
My gut feeling is, no, they're not going to have to deal with it for years to come. I really don't believe that in my heart.
And while masks are no longer required, some students still choose to wear them and follow other precautions to keep themselves healthy, like little 6-year-old Arlo.
It makes me feel safer.
For more analysis on learning loss and what's it going to take to get our kids back up to speed after the experience of online learning in the pandemic, I'm joined by DANKO. She's chair of the board for Hamilton's Public School Board. Dawn, thanks for joining us. What do you think it's going to take to get kids caught up?
Truly, I think the first thing it's going to take is the investment in people in our schools supporting students, having a different ratio where we have less students per adult supporting them. And I'm grateful that we've had an investment from the ministry for this next year for learning recovery. I hope that that continues at least into the following year, because we've had 2.5 years of transitions where different students have had different levels of learning loss, social skill loss, depending on how they're supported at home and in the community. We know that if it's taken 2.5 years to get to this point, it's going to take more than the next year to recover from it.
And in terms of a timeline, I mean, it's really hard to put some time on this, but at the same time, are we looking at years? Are we looking at decades? Is this an experience that kids can recover from in the long run?
It's really interesting, and there's been a lot of speculation about, is this going to have an impact on a generation that they will not recover from? But what we're seeing as students are back in person, and we're seeing some lifting of restrictive measures, there's gathering out in the community, that they are recovering and they are bouncing back, and we're seeing some shifts in how they report their mental health and well-being. So I would say that I am hopeful that students can recover from this, but there are also things like, if you consider learning in math, if you went through transitions and really struggled with some of the independent learning, that's hard to recover from, because what you learn each year is scaffolded into the next year. So as a system, we really have to consider that opportunity to step back, see where our learners are, and make sure that we're taking them back and getting that foundational learning so that they can move forward.
We've heard a lot during the pandemic from students, teachers, parents about the negative aspects of online learning. And while I don't think too many people disagree with the fact that we had to do it, it sure would be nice if we never had to do it again. Can you tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, what you've seen the impact has been on students, and why perhaps that might be an argument for not ever doing it again, pretty much no matter what?
Well, I would say with online learning, there's been different experiences for different students, and it really depends on, one, their level of comfort with technology, their level of independence with their learning, and the supports that they have at home. And so when you don't have that level of comfort with independent learning, technology, or supports at home, we had students completely disengage. And so that's where we see disproportionate impacts on different students in our system. I would say that when we think about online learning, at the beginning of the pandemic, there were conversations about, do we rethink how we deliver education? I think the resounding answer is no. Absolutely not in elementary school, and we really need to think carefully about what online learning looks like in secondary school, because learning is a social construct, and what we've seen is students have lost the ability to learn social skills, to practice those skills, to work together. One of the best ways that you can learn something is by teaching someone else, and in the online environment, students really weren't comfortable with doing that. So I think that we have confirmed that school needs to be in person for the large part for almost every student.
The concerns over learning loss expected to shift from the classroom to campus.
So there are gaps that we're seeing in some of the writing skills and some of the research skills, numeracy skills, those foundational skills that students bring into a university because they've had now different experiences. And so I would say across the university in different faculties that folks are supporting that transition. They're absolutely aware of the gaps.
We're also really relying on our upper year students who were here before the pandemic to share what their experiences were and to help us think about those questions and those things that they found to be stressors that they now have answers to be able to share those with our incoming students.
One of the biggest stressors officials at McMaster University are hearing about from incoming students is exams and what to expect from those end-of-term tests. They say plans are in the works to ensure those students are supported.
Coming up, from the end of the school year to the start of summer vacation, and the costly and time-consuming headaches, no matter what your method for getting the heck out of town, the pandemic hangover impacting the entire tourism industry, and how long that could last. But first, COVID-19 wreaked havoc on healthcare, a system already pushed to its limits, how those hailed as heroes are managing right now, and what patients could expect in the months and years to come.